There's all this hype, especially now with AI, around programmatic SEO, right? It's like blast content out there, make sure like the search engines go index it, and just ensure that you're trying to create as much content as possible. The main problem occurs once the actual user lands on that article. It has no life to it.
How to scale to 10 million ARR and beyond with only paid ads. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Breaking B2B.com. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, founder over at Breaking B2B. And today we're going to be sharing exactly how you can do that. Joining me is Niels Klement. Niels is a CMO over at Perspective. They're a 10 million ARR B2B SaaS. Niels, how are we doing, sir?
Very, very good, man. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
On the show.
Very, very welcome, sir. So looking forward to this. So we're going to be diving into a bit of an unusual one. Every now and then, I like to bring on marketers, founders, revenue leaders, and break down exactly how they've got their company, whether it's B2B service or tech or SaaS, to where they are now. So I think this could be an interesting one. And I know that we were discussing just before we hit record that you started in around, I think it was 2022, when they were at about 3 million ARR. Since you've scaled them to
Correct.
10 million ARR back in 2024 through paid media alone. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what the early days look like. We'll talk about what the scaling, what the growing pains look like. We'll talk about some of the biggest mistakes, learnings, so marketers, founders, revenue leaders tuning in can hopefully learn from those mistakes and maybe fast track their journey. But first and foremost, why the heck did you choose to only do paid media? Didn't you make your life hard by doing that?
It's a very good question, man. And I think, like, truth be told, by now there are many other channels that also came into the mix over the long haul, but the primary one to this day is still paid media. And I think the reason why we chose it is because we're fully bootstrapped. Maybe it's also something for the title in general, but we're fully bootstrapped. And so we had limited resources from the get-go. So the main question was, how can we figure out one channel that ideally also scales far, so it matches the ambitions as to where we want to take the company. And that naturally somehow turned out to be paid ads because it's the first thing that we got working back in the day. And so we just doubled down on it because it was what we were best at. And of course, like also with the product that we have, with what Perspective is, funnels and mostly ad agencies and paid media ad agencies leveraging our product, it was also very, very close to our DNA, right? And also something that we have done before as an agency. And it was somehow just a natural progression. It was the first thing that clicked for us, and also the one that we could scale the furthest. And that's basically how it came to be, and why we focused so much on it.
Got it. Because before the company was a SaaS, it was an agency, right?
Correct. Yes. And that was also where the product concept came from, actually. So, like in the early days, we've been building award-winning websites for Fortune 500 companies. We had clients like Mercedes. We worked for Coca-Cola, for Google, and likes. And it was basically huge projects, right? So huge projects, mostly media, web design primarily, and all that good stuff. And then at some point, then the agency started to also do paid media services, right? Because that is the natural progression. Like, hey, of course, like beautiful websites, that's one piece of the puzzle. Everybody wants to have that, but what do you do with that if you don't have any traffic, right? I think that makes sense. And so we naturally transitioned into paid media and being a paid media agency. And there was one specific case where we built a configurator page that was a little bit more interactive. It was more of a quiz funnel, basically, and it worked so well. And we had so much demand for it. Then basically the idea was, what could it look like to actually productize that? How could we enable other people to actually build something like that at scale? And how can we enable ourselves to build something like that at scale? And that is how Perspective was born, or the idea for Perspective was born originally.
Got it. So it was almost out of your own kind of internal pain point where you thought you could kind of upsell website clients, new products, new services, and the SaaS came from there.
Correct. Exactly.
Gotcha. Real quick, are you tired of seeing competitors above you in Google's organic search results and AI search every time dream clients are searching for your solution, your software, comparing vendors, or looking for problems that you solve? Meaning those competitors are stealing traffic, mindshare, pipeline, and revenue just because they invested in an SEO program. We fix that at Breaking B2B with an unusual approach to SEO and content marketing for B2B and SaaS companies, why not book a call to see if we can start driving pipeline and revenues as quick as 90 days with our different approach? Head over to breakingb2b.com to grab a call. I look forward to chatting to you soon. Back to the episode. Okay, fine. So you came on board after they were a couple of years in at 3 million ARR. What did that look like? So were you the first marketer that came on board? Like, talk us through those early days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so before I took over marketing, Michael, one of the founders, he was running marketing, and he was also basically the one that figured out paid ads as like the first viable channel for Perspective to grow. And he figured out a concept that is still helping us grow to this day, which is the webinar concept, because inevitably as a SaaS business, you're usually very cash flow constrained, right? You have terms like payback period for a reason, because you usually pay more in acquisition than you make back immediately. And basically a webinar funnel is a function for, or was a function for us to outcompete that cash flow constraint, because we were selling yearly bundles, and that allowed us to basically invest the buck into paid ads and into paid distribution, and from there on make that money back faster so we could reinvest a little bit more or a little bit faster as well. That also allowed us to grow to the first couple of hundred thousands in MRR, and from there on the question basically became, okay, what can we do to scale that? And that is where I came in, and then we started actually building a team around it and actually building like a strong process around how do we want to do paid media and what can it look like at scale. Exactly, but we've also started to invest in a couple of other things. Like we dabbled a little bit in content marketing, and we also dabbled a little bit in affiliate marketing and partnerships, and that is also growing currently. But paid media was also, in terms of the team focus, what we're focusing on as a team, the primary accountability that we're still carrying to this date.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got it. So to dive in a bit deeper, up until you came on, a lot of the growth was from paid media to kind of webinar funnels. Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yes.
And talk us through, for anyone that's tuning in, listening, watching, that's not that familiar with that kind of flow, what does that look like in layman's terms?
The webinar funnel at the end of the day is basically like a classic webinar that you see over and over again. And it's actually something that's been used very widely in marketing, right? It's you run an ad, you get people to register for a webinar. That webinar usually has a very, very educational angle, because you also want to provide value up front, right? You want to build that rapport with the market. Then you run that webinar, and then you append a pitch to it in the simplest terms. And that pitch then usually is your product, your service, a call with your sales team, or in our case, yearly plans for a software. And the reason why that works so well is especially like we have a free trial model, right? So you can sign up for Perspective, getting a 14-day free trial, just testing the tool, seeing if it actually fits your use case. And then, if you like it, you continue to use it. If not, you don't. And because of that media spend that we are able to invest within that webinar funnel, we have that refinancing option at the end of this funnel where people are purchasing yearly plans. All the trials that are being generated through that distribution in the front end are technically free. Right? And so it's like it's a different version of the traditional SaaS funnel, where you would usually see SaaS businesses and B2B running ads towards a demo page, or like, hey, book a demo or get a free trial and all that good stuff. And that definitely works, but you need to have a lot of certainty in your numbers, right? You need to know exactly, okay, how much am I able to spend per demo, because I know exactly how well my sales team closes, or how much am I able to spend per trial because I know exactly how well my product closes, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't have that figured out early, you can't really invest confidently. And so that webinar funnel was a very, very helpful motion for us to also have more confidence and then be able to invest a little bit more. But that's basically what it looks like. Simply, you run an ad, you get people to register, you provide a lot of value, you pitch them at the end, and that is that growth loop that you're creating through that.
Got it. Okay, fine. So that's when you came on board, and when you kind of saw the growth that the founders got to kind of 3 million ARR, what were your first kind of steps? What were the first things that you evaluated, looked at, put in place?
It's a really good question, because I remember distinctly, like back in the day, we've been only active in the German market before now, and we basically only grew within the German market. And one interesting caveat that comes, it's basically like a pro and a con of the type of product that we've been building. It's that the use case applies to many, many different businesses. And at the end of the day, right, the local bakery can build a lead gen funnel or a recruiting funnel. But at the same time, an agency could do the same thing or whatever. There's so many different industries that could benefit from Perspective. And actually, when we looked at our company, at our user base, that was also quite apparent. We had lots and lots of different users, but we have never really taken the time to double down on who is it actually that we want to focus on also in terms of communication. And so like a lot of the early things that we've done back then, or that I've done when I joined the company, was also like, let's just get the foundation straight. Who is it exactly that we're trying to get into the product? Who is it exactly that we're building for? And what does that look like long term? And how does our strategy need to change to reach those people? So I think it's a very cliche thing to say. It's like, know your customer, figure out your ICP, right? It's like every LinkedIn post out there in B2B, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So yeah, that was definitely one of the first things. Exactly. And then honestly, the next biggest thing, and that is, I think for any company that grows quite heavily through paid media, content in general, maybe that now changes a little bit with AI, but content in general is a quite ops heavy game, right? So there's a lot of operations behind it. If you want to scale organic content, if you want to scale paid media content and ad creatives, creative is the fuel for both of these, for any social channel, if it's organic or if it's paid. And it is a lot of work to make sure that you're creating quality creative at scale. And so that was basically the next thing that we focused on, or that I focused on, was, okay, how can we figure out a process to actually make that happen and actually make sure that if we want to invest more money into paid because it's working well for us, how can we ensure efficiency doesn't break on us, right? And customer acquisition cost doesn't rise too heavily if we're trying to double budgets or things like that. So that was the next biggest challenge. And sometimes it's going better, sometimes it's going worse. It's an ongoing challenge, of course, like running in a creative engine like that. But that was definitely the two biggest first items on the list.
Got it. Makes sense. I mean, that's the foundation, I guess, evaluating your ICP, looking at your current customer base, and I guess evaluating. Did you see any, when you first came on board, were there any surprising things that you saw, i.e., oh, we shouldn't be going after these customers, or these really aren't profitable, or we've only got 2 of this clients, but we could actually, like, if we doubled down on these, it would really help our margins?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think there is a lot of opinions and a lot of gut feel within the company already, and that was specifically around who we should focus on.
Yeah.
And funnily, that was the correct gut feel, because of course, like, founders are talking to users, like the team is talking to users, we're in touch with users all day long. So usually the gut feel already is a good piece of data, but having that confirmed and getting some certainty is very, very important. And because of that gut feel, there was also not too much clarity on how we wanted to execute. For example, like this idea for us back then, we focused a lot on recruiting agencies in the German-speaking market. It was a huge market, is a huge market to this day, because recruiting is a very, very pressing problem in this market. And so we still set in our ads, for example, like a very, very simple but actionable example. We said things like, hey, marketers, instead of hey, recruiting agencies. And so we fixed it by saying, hey, recruiting agencies, right? It's like small things like that, but at scale, and making sure that that's dialed in and consistent across channels. That was actually one of the things that we changed immediately, and like something that was quite actionable. And I think, like, in general, also because my background was paid media for all my life, for all my career so far. There were definitely some optimizations at a broader scale that we were able to do, just in terms of, for example, okay, also dialing in our data, making sure we collect the right data from paid media, and on the basis of that, reevaluating previous business decisions, like what campaigns to spend on that we haven't evaluated for a long, long time. And I think that is actually very, very valuable, especially when like anybody starting in a new role, things like that, or when looking at a fresh ad account, if you're an agency, whatever it really is, like these fresh eyes and coming into it with without any prejudices and really collecting the right data, making the right decisions, can actually be very, very refreshing and very, very effective then going forward.
Nice. And you mentioned creative just now. Do you have a process? Because like you said, that to keep it fresh, to keep it on point, to make sure it resonates with your dream clients, like, is there a process that you follow for that?
The operations side of things is very, very processized. So basically, okay, from idea of that ad, how do we get it to land in the ad account and receive budget to be distributed? That is a clear, like, step-by-step straightforward process. One thing that I have found very, very interesting to this date is that is the variable of creative in itself, which is also very, very hard to processize, and it's also very, very hard to teach from my point of view, because at the end of the day, right? What is the goal of an ad? The goal of an ad is to take some form of existing desire or problem within the market and take that energy and direct it towards your product so people want to purchase. That is all marketing tries to do. And I think for you to do that in a way that is very, very unique and that actually gets people to listen to you is a creative exercise that is very, very hard to processize, because it takes a lot of personal insight and a lot of specific knowledge, is maybe what Naval would say, right? But similar to defining the ICP, I think that is very, very important to get clarity on as to how are you talking about your product, who are you talking to, what are the pain points that you're talking about, what are the value propositions that you're talking about. And that is only done through a lot of research and a lot of proximity to customers. And that is also why we run live trainings, for example. Like I sit in weekly live trainings with 30 to 50 people at a time, our customers, and I just listen to them. I listen to the problems. I let them ask questions, and I try to answer them. And like after these live trainings, I have 7 to 10 new ideas for ads to run. And I think that is actually something that is quite undervalued when I think about it. It's like just how much proximity actually matters to making sure you produce creative that actually has the chance to change the trajectory of the business. Because oftentimes it's what people think, like what leadership might think, what marketers might think, what resonates, but it's not what truly does. And I think that is actually the greatest challenge within it, and something that's not too easy to just binarily processize.
Great point. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it is something that's often overskipped, from my experience anyway, which is limited. But as you go more and more up market, to mid-market companies, enterprise, it feels like that directly talking to the customer feeling just gets more and more and more lost. Very good point. Yes. Whereas when 100%. I speak to Bootstrap founders like yourself, marketing leaders on this podcast, on discovery calls, on sales calls each week, I get the feeling that more and more of those got boots on the ground, like you say, whether that's through live sessions talking to customers or webinars or in-person events or private dinners, whatever it is. Totally. But as you get bigger and bigger, it feels like that gets lost. Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I actually think that is also very, very interesting, talking about SEO as, you know, one of your main areas of expertise. There's all this hype, especially now with AI, around programmatic SEO, right? It's like blast content out there, make sure like the search engines go index it, and just ensure that you're trying to create as much content as possible. The big problem that I would have with that approach, and I'm not saying it's not valid, I think it actually can create a lot of value, but the main problem occurs once the actual user lands on that article. It has no life to it. It has no unique point of view. It has most likely also no beautiful design, right? It's like these intangibles that matter so much in converting someone or in changing someone's mind. I usually, are very, very hard to come by and like very hard to craft, and it takes a lot of effort, and it usually doesn't work with just a, quantity approach. And I think that applies in any marketing channel, similar to SEO or paid ads in this case. Yeah, I think it's a great lesson for marketers and founders in general. Something I ramble on about on LinkedIn, on the podcast all the time is, especially with, you mentioned SEO, with our angle of SEO, like you can rank, but you're not going to convert unless you resonate with your ICP. And that's why, at least at this stage we're at, that's why what AI tools lack, that customer research, that boots on the ground, actually talking to prospects, customers, whether they're recent won, recent churned, whatever. Because that's why you need that customer research, that direct insight, so you can speak to their pain points, their goals, their jobs to be done, their frustrations. Because without that, like you say, it's likely to fall flat. Yeah. Unless you're flogging something kind of really low consideration. Yeah. But even then, I'd say it's still somewhat important. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, great, really important point. Okay, cool. So that's kind of early days. Started with the German recruitment market, evaluated the customer base, the ICP, started nailing down a process for the creative, started talking to customers regularly, weekly sessions. What was like the first milestone? So starting at 3 million ARR, what was the first kind of milestone that you hit? And how long did it take? Dude, like
To be honest, I don't have I don't have the
It's all a
specific
blur.
timeline. Like it's all a blur, honestly. Like it just like I started and I never stopped. It's very, very hard to give you specific milestones or specific timelines, to be honest. But like one of the bigger changes for us, definitely that I can speak on is like we have been building within that German market for a long, long time, and only beginning of this year, like we truly started to figure out, okay, how do we actually can grow into the big leagues, right? How can we actually go and master this international market, this English speaking market? How can we ensure that we actually also win users over there? And that is like an entirely new journey as well. And it felt like in many different ways we had to start from like a completely clean slate and literally figure out so many things anew, because all the things that you feel like you have learned in that market before, and all the data that you had and all the insights that you had and the customer conversations, like yes, there's maybe still things that you can take over, but guess what? Different markets also behave very, very differently. And that was like a huge learning for us, and it's still a huge learning process. But it's one that's very, very gratifying, because also if you look at it in terms of like revenue potential for any company or any software company that tries to go global, of course, if we were to just focus on one specific geolocation, we'd be capped. We'd be capped in terms of growth, right? And our ambitions definitely span beyond that. And in general, also like interestingly, when I look into the market out there specifically for what Perspective is, and for those that don't know what Perspective is basically a funnel builder primarily designed for ad agencies that focus on speed and performance, right? So the goal of a Perspective funnel is to be spun up in a fairly short amount of time and make sure to crush your results wherever you're getting traffic from. That is basically the idea. And the landscape within landing page and funnel builders out there in the international market is huge. It's huge. It's multi-billions, right? And there's big players that everybody has heard of just because they have been doing an amazing job. But I think specifically from that product point of view, there's a lot of opportunity for a new solution, for something that's fresher, that's faster, that's more beautiful, that's UX first, and that's more effective. And that's exactly what we're building for. But of course, also that competitive landscape is very, very different. And all of a sudden we need to learn all these new things and learn how customers think differently about that. So that has definitely been a bigger journey, but also a very gratifying milestone, because like only since this year we've been growing quite fast again. And it's primarily because we're opening new markets and we're building beautiful new solutions within our product. So that's definitely the biggest milestone in the last couple of years.
When did you move outside of Germany into other geos, and what did that look like?
So we did first testing quite early also last year. But you can imagine it, like we had these big ambitions, wanted to go global, right? And free the global market. But we basically were just investing 20% of our time into that biggest opportunity, supposedly. And that was also quite the journey, because of course I think also looking back, it was driven a lot by fear. When I think leadership, of course, if you have a viable business, if you have a stable business, if you have a good, well-sized business, of course, the primary goal is to not lose it, right? That is what you want to make sure before you try to build something completely fresh, right? So the fear of loss is way stronger than like the desire for something new or the desire for gain. And so we truly had to, because we are limited in resources, we are bootstrapped. We still can't, just all of a sudden hire 100 people and somehow get it done and just brute force our way through this. So we really had to reprioritize quite heavily, and that was only done earlier this year, where we said, all right, for example, we switched all of our communications from German to English and said no to localization. We will most likely do localization at some point again, but that will require different resources and different priorities one more time. But these are, for example, switches that came along and that started happening earlier this year.
Got it. And were there certain geographies that you moved into first?
Mm-hmm. Also, good question. We've seen a lot of resonance in the Dutch market, for example. That was a market that enjoyed our product for a long time, still does. But we've seen and we've tested many different things. We've We've interviewed with a lot of customers as well, looked at all of our data, of course, in terms of, excuse me, in terms of retention and trial to pay conversion rate, like all the important metrics that we have in SaaS. And what we've realized is, okay, interesting. Like, yes, perception is a little bit different, and who these customers are comparing us or our product against is also a little bit different. But generally speaking, these look all very, very alike. And so then the question became, all right, if if all this seems like it's going to be similarly easy/hard, let's just go for the biggest opportunity, which is the English-speaking market, primarily UK and US. And so these are now the primary markets that we're focusing on.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. But you got to 10 million before you shifted outside of Germany?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Exactly.
What's been like the biggest challenge moving outside of the German market?
I think it's different customer expectations, especially because of how we're building our product and how we've been doing marketing. That was just like the main challenge was literally stepping back into that beginner's mindset. It's being okay with not knowing again and then needing to figure it out and like literally do the groundwork. There was many cold DMs that I sent to customers that have canceled without, wanting to talk to us, without leaving a note, without any feedback. And we needed to get that feedback. So hunting for that, talking to as many customers as possible, doing lots and lots of research, testing, hundreds and hundreds of iterations of new funnels, of new creative, of content, et cetera, like really, really going back into the weeds in that sense. And we've been always in the weeds where all of us are very much builders. But that was definitely the biggest challenge when not knowing, trying to somewhere find opportunities and positive signals and really go dig for them. That truly then paid off so far. But that was definitely the biggest challenge, like just finding what can work again. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
And when, like going back to actually scaling up until last year, when you were still in Germany, what else, was there any, in terms of that growth trajectory, was it mainly just doing more of the same? Like, 'cause it sounds like you had a good feel for the market. You were talking to customers all the time. You were knowing their problems, what they're struggling with, what they actually wanted to get out of the product, I'm guessing, and what the product was missing, what the product was lacking. So you constantly iterate. You're working on creative, you're building out processes. I think you said you were building out a team, so perhaps you can talk us kind of what that looked like, going from just yourself on marketing and building out a team, and kind of what you feel the other moments were that kind of help you hit that 10 mil milestone.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. And I think like we've been, the idea of channel diversification has been also quite on my mind and has been also part of the strategy for a longer time. But it's similar to this switch from like the German-speaking market over to international markets. It's okay, if you truly want to build a channel that is as significant as paid media is to us, for example, like you can't do that by investing 10% of your time, right? It's like you need to really go aggressively go and build for that channel and make sure there's a lot of resources on the channel for it to even have a chance to succeed, especially if it's measured against the previous success with other channels. And so for us, back then, it was quite clear that especially in the German market, we primarily focused on paid media because that worked so well for us. We also did a couple of other things like organic marketing, like we ran a podcast and all these things, and that worked. And I think it's especially important for product marketing to just spread the word about the success of our customers. But the main distribution channel continued to be paid advertising. One other thing that we then did, and that is also something that helped us immensely to this day, is because we were quite good at doing these webinars, also on an evergreen basis, we've done release events quite successfully with thousands of people watching live, most of them, of course, being our customers, so other potential customers that are interested in switching over. And so Mikey, one of the founders, he basically spun up this beautiful presentation. Last time we did like a nice keynote Apple style video that was also pretty sick, a pretty cool project that everybody on the team enjoyed. But we've been basically building like a set of features that we know would be very well received by the market based on feature requests, based on voices. And then we ran up a huge release event, as I said, with thousands of people watching live, like classic, like a WWDC, like Apple would do, right? And these also very much helped us in terms of market perception. also maintaining that market leader perception, I think specifically within that German market. And then from there on also with retention, because we always were able to like make sure everybody knows exactly about the vision that we're building for. So that was another bigger channel, but of course attached to that was also a lot of paid media. And one new thing that we're now very much focusing on, especially after paid media still is a viable channel and continues to be even more viable now that we moved into different geolocations. But partnerships is one thing that we truly believe in, especially within a very closely knitted community like performance marketers and agencies online, right? So there's a clear community around that topic, and we're part of that community. We're building for the people. We are the people. And we're looking to just be very, very well connected with all of the influential people within that community, make sure we provide as much value as possible, get all of them successful with our product, and then take it from there. So yeah. Second thing you ask is team structure. I can also dive a little bit deeper into that if you like.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. And one thing that I think was always a strength was also do a lot with rather little. So we never I think the biggest team size that we ever had to this date, and we are still at that point, is roughly 40 people, most of which are engineering and product. Reason being, is quite straightforward. We are in a global, very competitive market, and our commitment is to build the best freaking piece of software there is. There's just no way around that, right? We want to make sure that everybody out there in that market knows exactly, hey, this is the place to be. This is what I want to use. And so that's where we focus most of our resources. But so far, what the team looks like for us is we do have one performance marketer. We do have one video editor in full-time. Right now, creative strategy and freelance, also hiring for creative strategy if anybody is interested, just to plug that quickly right here. But basically, these two gentlemen, the performance marketer is Elliot, the video editor is Jackie. These two gentlemen are completely focused on that paid media function. So Elliot is running all the paid social accounts, right? And Jack is, of course, making sure that all the paid social accounts have enough fuel to actually spend money and do so effectively. So that is one of the primary functions, or the primary function currently within the team. Second function is partnerships. As I said before, like we do have an affiliate program that is quite successful nowadays. We do have different sorts and variations of partner programs where we partner with bigger strategic partners, like more influential people within the game. We focus on how can we make our successful customers spokespeople of Perspective. So there's many different specific projects within that partnerships realm that are starting to pay off quite well. And then the third piece of it is content and product marketing. So within there, we're starting with SEO right now. That is definitely a bigger piece. Product marketing is a huge thing for us in general. We're quite focused on this direct response motion, but we do know exactly that, of course, you can't just have big promises and big claims and lots of proof. Yes, that works in terms of conversion, but what is the substance and how can we actually communicate to our customers and to the market what are the beautiful things that we're building? So that is the third function, and that is what the team looks like. Specifically in partnerships, we have 2 more people, and in product marketing and content, we have 2 more people as well. So it's a total of 6 people right now.
Got it. Quite lean.
Exactly.
Quite a lean
Quite
operation.
Lean. And we're trying to stay that way, especially now with AI and different ways of leveraging these processes. I think there's opportunity to try and maintain that for as long as possible.
It feels like a lot of B2B SaaS and tech companies are doing the same, especially these kind of 5 million ARR, 10 million ARR companies, at least the founders that I know, kind of doing similar things.
I think also the trend shifted a little bit, right? Especially like with the market drying up a little bit in terms of VC money and all that good stuff. And maybe it's opening up a little bit more recently, but the clear trend from let's grow as efficiently as possible from let's grow at all costs has been there, even for like funded companies. And we have had that mindset from the get-go because we didn't have any other choice. So I think many other, it resonates with many other by now as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
And are you able to disclose what your paid media spend looked like from the early days, and like what it looks like now?
I should have brought the data, man. If you're going into the
just
early
as a
days,
rough idea, I think marketers listening might be interested to know.
Yeah, no, we've been spending like depends on the month, depends on the performance, depends on how well creative is going for us, right, and how good the funnels are. But in the higher months, we had months where we spent $250 a month on ads. We've been able to do that. And in the lower, it's like I think we started with $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, right? Like very, very slow, because you need to just prove that in and of itself is profitable. And once that's done, you can scale it up. So like from starting out, 10 to 250 grand a month is like the range where it's at.
Got it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
how much of that growth outside of paid media, as you were growing to 10 million ARR, do you think was from word of mouth, like referrals, the product kind of selling itself with the branding and all that kind of stuff,
Good question.
and the virality, I suppose, of products? A bit like if you compare Calendly, every time you see Calendly, you see the logo and someone might share it,
Totally.
etc.
Yeah. So one huge thing for us is actually recommendation. Like, because we are operating within a very close, tight-knitted community, recommendation was always big for us. And we had, like, it was actually a primary, like next to paid media, the primary thing that was driving new people into the software, recommendation. The other ones, I don't know the exact percentages, but I would assume like at some point maybe paid media was 40%, then recommendation was 60%. But of course, recommendation is something that we couldn't perfectly influence other than building the greatest affiliate program there is. And the other ones in the lower percentages definitely, and making like the last share maybe of that. But that was the primary two, and it's exactly still the case. And partnerships now is slowly but surely taking a bigger share of that entire pie. So exactly.
Talk to us a bit more about how you think about kind of customer success and making sure folks, like you say, you want your product to be the best. Like what does that actually look like? What can marketers and founders glean from that?
Yeah. Also a great question, man, because I think like especially like the dream of the SaaS business is, oh damn, I have this extremely leveraged business model where I can just dump as many people into it, and then all of a sudden all of them keep paying subscriptions. Guess what? That's unfortunately not the truth, right? It's a lot more service based also than what many people might think. And at the end of the day, also the marketing team, what we're quite focused on, and that's also this entire product and content marketing function, or why I'm running these live trainings that I've talked about before, right? It's not just for the customer proximity, but also to ensure customers are successful. And especially with a product like funnels or landing pages, and specifically our industry, a big variable of your success with a product is how good you are at driving traffic. Do you have a source to get visitors from? Because otherwise you won't generate any leads, right? And so that is what we're quite focused on in terms of the help material that we create. We do have a school community of thousands of people. Our Facebook community is more than 10,000 people. And we, like literally what we do there all day is do customer support on all types of questions as it relates to marketing. That's a big pie of it. On top of that, we do the weekly live trainings. On top of that, we have video courses on how to integrate Meta, integrate your Meta pixel, how to set up your first campaigns, right? So there's tons and tons of help articles that Louise is creating and is making sure are very straightforward and helpful. So there's loads and loads of content that is basically only seen primarily by our customers, because yes, this customer success part is very, very important for retention and very, very important in general for your growth, of course. So definitely something to not be underestimated.
I think we're not too dissimilar in how we think about that. I mean, are you of the mindset that you should give prospects or customers almost everything so they can do it themselves, but they won't because it will be hard work? So aka in my line of work, they'll choose us to run their SEO as a service. In your line of work, they'll choose your product because it makes it so much easier. So they can, you'll give them all the information possible. So they technically could do it themselves and cobble a solution together, but they realize that you've actually got the painkiller.
Oh, it's such a good question, man, because how we think about onboarding in general, because onboarding is a huge topic within SaaS, right? It's like, what's the experience of a user after he decided or she decided to try your product? How well can you provide that value that your product should provide to them, and how fast? There's basically three categories there. It's skill, like how skilled are they to actually make it happen? It's how much then time, and it's belief. So time is then how much time do they actually have to invest into it and to set it up, right? And then belief is how strong is their belief to actually make it happen, that it's going to be successful. And you need to make sure that you're like all three are strong. So you want to have this most skilled user, you want the user with the most time, and you want the user with the strongest belief that they are going to be successful. Exactly. And can you just quickly repeat your question, because maybe I'm losing track a little
Yeah,
bit?
it was along the lines of, are you a believer, a bit like myself, like give everything away,
Yes, give
give
everything.
everything
Yes.
away, and then
Yes.
some people will try and cobble it together themselves, get so frustrated, and eventually,
Yes. Yes.
eventually use
Yeah.
you. Others won't. Others might do it themselves.
Yes. Totally. Totally. And I think that's also why we are focusing so much on agencies as well, right? Because many people, there's a huge chunk of the market that needs landing pages that needs funnels, but they would never do it themselves, just because they don't want to invest the time, or they just don't want to in general. It's not their priority. They don't see it as a priority. That's where the agencies come in, right? Similar to like it is in your industry, or like in SEO in general. For us, it's the same thing. We call these people the perspective agencies. There's many agencies that literally build their business model on top of our product because it's so fast to use and gets so great performance. And so, yeah, I think we try to do both, right? We try to make sure that people are very successful and are very get the skills that they need to get it done themselves, and actually believe that they want to get it done and that it's an important thing to get done. And for those that aren't there, we try to focus a lot on agencies and enable agencies to acquire more of the clients that are not interested in doing it themselves for some reason.
Yeah, I like it. Let's dive a bit deeper into that as we wrap up, as I think that's going to be useful to end on. So
Sounds good.
how do you think about that? Because it sounds like, if we go back to right at the very start of the conversation, you talked about the webinars you run, make them as educational, as helpful as possible,
Yeah.
but of course plug your product, your offer, your service.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? How do you recommend other marketers, founders think about actually, I guess, gleaning the insights of what does make helpful, useful, educational, entertaining content for prospective customers? Like, what's the workflow?
One thing that we, in general, like, our DNA is in performance marketing, and it was always in performance marketing, right? And so I think, like, I also have the natural tendency to primarily look into how do I make this convert? How do I make sure people watch it, they watch it all the way, and at the end they click this button to then go purchase or get a free trial. At the same time, though, and that is especially why it's so important for SaaS, or any product where you essentially need a lot of investment from your customers, may it be time, may it be skill, et cetera. You want to make sure that they know as much as possible exactly about what they are going to expect when they make the decision to buy from you, right? And so one thing that we also run a lot in marketing is the so-called VSL. It's the video sales letter, right? A tried and true concept within performance marketing, and or within marketing in general. And so back in the day, I was usually trying to figure out the perfect argumentative structure for a VSL. Like, what are the things I can say that, like, immediately convince people to buy our product? By now, whenever I craft a VSL, whenever we as a team craft a VSL, we focus on the hook. We want to make sure that it's a very, very strong hook, that it has the desired results, or whatever we're promising, very beautifully put at the beginning, because we want to make sure people watch the video. The middle part is usually just focused on education. Right, so we really dive deep into how to use the product, into how exactly that fits with that specific use case, like all the questions essentially that customers are asking themselves if they're considering to buy a product. And then we end usually on two things, actually. So lots of social proof, because believe it or not, it always increases conversion. And last but not least, a really strong offer, a call to action. So we focus on these four things, right? So it's a great hook, it's very educational and valuable content, it's lots of social proof, and it's a strong offer / call to action. And I think if you have that, and that goes for any type of marketing piece, right? If it's an ad creative, if it's organic content, if it's a VSL, if it's a webinar, if you have these four pieces, I think there's a good chance that you'll be successful.
Love it.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, as I think you've got a couple minutes, share with us, we've talked about a lot of the good stuff, but what's like the most painful mistake or mistakes that you've made along the way? Because it can't all be good.
Most painful mistake? No, of course not, man. I think the most painful mistake, and that is a good and a bad thing, is I think, like, in general, also in terms of how I operate, and I'm just going to speak now for myself a little bit. So I'm a very impatient person as it relates to business and as it relates to growth. Like, I'm always chasing opportunities. I'm always like, what's the next biggest thing? How can we make this faster? How can we add 100 more customers, et cetera, et cetera? How can we, right? Like, it's always like that question is very big on my mind, and I think it leads me to not be patient enough to get feedback in the deepest way. So, for example, there have been campaigns that I pushed for scaling up, where we invested a lot of money, where not as much money as originally anticipated came back. And so that is something that I had to learn the hard way in the early days. It's like see the full story, think it through from beginning to end, and think for yourself. And that was definitely like there were a couple of occasions of that, but it's definitely something I had to learn the hard way, and wasn't easy. And there was also many things and many campaigns that we've crafted, that I have crafted, where I doubted myself because I've been iterating on the hundreds of iterations and it still didn't work. And letting go of these types of projects and letting go of these things that don't really work was also a little bit tough on me. And it happens over and over again, but we push through, and there once in a while is the silver bullet that actually makes it happen. So yeah, two pieces there.
I think I'm certainly guilty of that, being impatient, wanting impact fast. How is there anything you tell yourself, like when it comes to that, like we want to switch this campaign, or we want this, or I think we'll get a quick win off this? Like, what do you tell yourself?
I truly had to become way better at focus, and I think like it's just the timelines that I play in my mind. It's like, 100 million by end of this year, $1 billion company by end of the month. Like you can stretch it as far as you want. At the end of the day, like truthfully, if you give yourself a big enough timeline, you also allow yourself to basically just focus on the most important things. But I still think it's very important to be on very short cycles. So for example, we do monthly project cycles because that also allows us to not squeeze anything into a quarter because we feel like, oh, now this is so important and we would have to wait 3 months to actually go and execute it. No, we reconsider every single month on what's the most important priority, and that allows us to actually within the month focus on what we decided to be the priority and just push the other stuff to the next month. So quick little trick there that was definitely super impactful for us.
Good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Good way to wrap it up. Niels, very much appreciate the time. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for being open with what's worked, what hasn't. With that,
likewise, man.
Please do tell us, myself and the audience, more about how they can learn from you, connect with you, and the best way to get in touch.
Totally. So it's Niels Klement on LinkedIn. That's, I think, the primary channel in terms of organic. But of course, if you want to grab a trial, check out the product that I talk so much about. It's perspective.co, and you'll find all the information there. And I think that's the two best channels.
Awesome. Thanks once again, man. Enjoyed the chat.
Likewise. Cheers, man. Thank you.
No worries. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, why not join thousands of B2B legends enjoying the newsletter? Head over to breakingb2b.com, hit the newsletter tab for unusual B2B marketing, SEO tips, case studies, rundowns, and me just doing weird stuff building in public. So with that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.